All right, let's move on. Ashok bhai?
Yeah.
Another.
Let's move.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another another mention in Bhagavad. By watering the roots, the branches and leaves also get nourishment. Similarly, by offering worship to Lord Krishna or Vishnu, because some of the Vaishnava school will have Vishnu as a dominant god. It is nothing but worshipping all souls, including our own self. So essentially the point is making is that God is the root of everything. So if you pray to the root, everything else will automatically get the nutrition. That's the idea. So the idea is basically be subservient to Krishna or Vishnu if you believe in that. Okay, more or less, yeah. Let's move on. Okay, so this is called Chatusloki by Achintya Ved School. Now, Chatusloki that we recited in the Chatusloki that was sung before we started is a Chatusloki that is emphasizing bhakti as Vallabhacharya will define. And if you read the translation, it will tell you the importance of bhakti. Now, this is Chatusloki as Achintya Ved, that means Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's version. And he's also using Bhagavat. And he says these four, and I didn't put the fourth one, I'll explain. These four forms the basis of everything of Vaishnavism per se. And what is that? This is what Lord Krishna says to Brahma. Oh Brahma, it is I, that I means Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead who was existing before creation when there was nothing but myself. So Krishna says, I existed before everything came in existence, nor was there any material nature cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I. That whatever you are seeing now, that in the world is nothing but I, Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And after the annihilation, what remains will also be the I, the personality of Godhead. So when I here is used, I is used as a Lord Krishna. Now, if you ask Keval Advaitin, he will say that I is not Lord Krishna, but that I is Nirguna Brahman. So that is that's the genesis of difference between Vaishnavism on one side and Keval Advaita on the other side. I here, Vaishnavite will school say, I actually mean Lord Krishna. Nobody else. Okay. Next sentence. This is the four important tenets of Vaishnavism. Oh Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. So that what he is saying is that everything that is connected in this world, everything that you see is connected to me. So that is, it's real. So this world is real. So anything that is not connected to me is not unreal, is not real. So that is an argument against Keval Advait. We will say, Keval Advait will say, all this world that you experience is unreal. And here he says, exactly reverse. That if it is not connected to me, it's unreal. But since this world is connected to me, it is real. Okay. This is my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in the darkness. So this is a concept commonly used in Shaktism also, in Shaivism. Shaivism says something like this: the manifested world that you experience is the Shakti or the energy of Lord Shiva. So what Krishna says here is the world that you experience is my energy that you are experiencing. If it was not connected to me, it's not real. But since it's my energy, it is real. That's the idea. So that is the second dominant concept. The third one, Oh Brahma, please know that universal elements enter into cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, this is the important part. I myself also exist within everything created. At the same time, I'm outside of everything. So this is a concept called, yeah.
No, that's the concept of Nirgun Brahman.
Well, yeah, it's basically, idea is that I exist within this world,
Yeah.
but I am also beyond this world.
Well, right.
That is the concept of Nirgun Brahman, that
Yeah.
Lord Krishna, controls both what exists in the world and that you don't experience is also under me. So that he will define as Akshara Brahman.
So this is from the Bhagavad Gita.
Now this is from Bhagavad.
I'm sorry, Bhagavad saying that Krishna tells all these things, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Right. So Krishna is saying this too. This is like Parikshit, the story of Parikshit is dying. Okay, well, if Smita says the story is like something like, it's a story within a story within a story. Call it that way. So call it this way. This is how it happened. Lord Shiva was asked by Parvati, explain to me all this world, how did it come about? What is this world? Where did all these things come about? So Lord Shiva says that's a very, very long story. And this story was told to me by Lord Krishna. I came to know from Lord Krishna, Vishnu or Krishna, whatever you believe in. So this is how it happened. But remember, when I'm telling you this story, I'm going to go in samadhi. So when I'm telling you the story, you must keep on saying ha like that. So that means you are listening to what I'm saying, so that I can recite the whole story. And if વાત સાચે કે શંકર ભગવાન કહેશે story, and I mean this is all made up, this is a mythological idea. Parvati, when Lord Shiva says all these complex ideas, Parvati goes to sleep. And there was an egg in the kitchen or wherever the Lord Shiva used to reside. An egg was just coming out and became a parrot. So parrot saw that Parvati is sleeping and not saying So Lord Shiva will wake up. So parrot starts saying and Shiva keeps on reciting story. But Shiva, after the creation of the world is finished, Lord Shiva wakes up and sees Parvati is sleeping. He says, what were you doing? I was telling you all these things. And he realizes that somebody was telling me, who was that? So he sees the parrot. And he says, you fooled me. So he goes after the parrot. And parrot flies. And Veda Vyasa and his wife were sitting. So that parrot and Veda Vyasa's wife is yawning. So parrot goes in the mouth of the Veda Vyasa's wife. This is all story. And becomes the Sukhdev. His wife becomes pregnant with Sukhdev. So this parrot who heard the story from Lord Shiva, which was a story told by Lord Vishnu, becomes Sukhdev. He is born as Sukhdev. And now Sukhdev, and then there is the story is like this. This is how it starts. Parikshit Raja was going around and he sees a sage, a Muni in Samadhi. And he wants water. And this guy is in Samadhi. So he gets mad. And because Muni is in Samadhi, so he gets mad and puts a dead snake in on his neck. And his son sees this. And he leaves, Parikshit Raja leaves. His son sees that, he comes back home and he says, somebody put a snake on my father's neck. So he curses Parikshit Raja that you are going to die in 7 days.
With a snake.
Muni wakes up and says, what did he do? Parikshit is a good Raja, good king. Why did he do this? But Parikshit Raja says, now that I am supposed to be dying, I want to know everything about this world and how this universe came about in next 7 days, so I get enlightened. So this story is told by Sukhdev to dying Pariksit, that he heard as a parrot that Shiva recited to Parvati, that it was recited to by Krishna.
Krishna.
So basically, movie in a movie in a movie.
Movie,
Yeah.
right.
All right. So this is a rough sketch of, I mean, it's a complicated, long story, but that's the mythological part. So this is what Lord Krishna is saying in Bhagavad. Now, who said what to whom and when, who knows? I have no idea. But this is how it happened.
It makes sense.
So the last one basically he says that idea, the one that is expressed here, that I am in this world and I am beyond this world, is called penantism. That means if you remember in Gita, there is a 9th chapter, there is a slok, and I can't remember the slok, but this is what it says. That ghost is in the post. I mean, yeah, ghost is in the post, but post is not in the ghost. That's idea. So what essentially saying that આપણે રાત્રે તમે જતા હોય અને પેલું વડ દેખાય તમને, પેલું ઝાડ હોય એમાં કશું હલે તો તમને ડર લાગે કે આ તો ભૂત છે, right? The idea is this, કે ભાઈ the ghost is in the post, but the post is not in the ghost.
That's true.
એટલે basically the imagination that you have came from something originally, but the original thing doesn't exist in the imagination. So Lord Krishna says that I exist in the universe, but I am not confined to this universe. I am not only existing in this universe itself, but I am more than that. When Lord Krishna says in 10th chapter, I think, that I wear the universe as a necklace on my neck. So that means necklace is part of me, but I am beyond that. It is just part of me. So that's the idea. And the fourth one that I did not copy was more abstract idea, but it basically says everything that is bound by space, time, and causality. When we talk about what came from what, why, that's a causality. Time, when you say before and after, you are talking about time. But what time is a concept itself, a confined concept. There must be a period where the concept of time did not exist. When we talk about time, because we are in the bubble, we think about time as one entity, something before and something after. But in the continuum of eternity, there is no time. It is continuous. So the second part. And a space, time, space, and causality exist within me. Essentially what he says is a time, a space. Idea of space, કે ભાઈ આ ઘરની સ્પેસ છે અને ઘરની બહારની સ્પેસ છે. But આકાશ, the space છે, everything is within the space. There is nothing, the space itself has no boundary. It is boundaryless. So everything that has a boundary, everything as a concept of before and after, everything that is a concept of because, I am beyond that. That is the idea. So that is a kind of very abstract sentence that he has. But he essentially says time, space, and causality are within me. I am not within that. All right. Did I make sense? All right. Dinesh bhai kas kehta tha?
Yeah, I'm still આજે તમે બધી parrot થયો ને parrot એના ગળામાં ગયો ને આ બધું, that all seems very, pardon my saying this, but seems very humbug. I mean, it doesn't make
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. That's the reason I wasn't going to say it. તમારો અવાજ બહુ ધીમો આવે છે.
No, because the whole thing is, if people, when we talk to people, they talk about Advaita and the Gnan part, and people say this is all humbug, but this is equally humbug.
Oh, this is more humbug actually. I mean, that is one of the reasons that I never liked bhakti kind of thing, Bhagavad kind of thing, because most of the Bhagavad that we hear in the Baroda and Gujarat and Ahmedabad area, this is the kind of stories that they talk, and that itself never attracted me. But I wasn't even going to mention about this story, but Smita said, tell the story as well.
ખબર પડે આપણને.
બરાબર છે
No, but
સ્મિતાબેન, I agree.
basically, Rajendra bhai, it is the stories were made more because they were interesting. They were they had some sort of what you call value of keeping the people engaged into the story.
Exactly right. So I think it was primarily for the reason of uneducated or less educated masses to be involved and get interested into some sort of religious conversation.
Right.
I would say.
Yeah, but what is the bottom line? I mean, શિવજીએ પાર્વતીને કીધું ને પાર્વતી સૂઈ ગઈ ને પેરેટ જન્મ્યો ને પેરેટ ને all that is, what is the bottom line?
The bottom line is what we talked about.
Yeah, but at least જ્યારે of course જ્યારે નાનો હતો ત્યારે આ બધું સાંભળીએ તો આ તો વાત ઘરે બેઠા દાદીમાં વાત કરે એના જેવું થયું.
ખરી વાત છે.
But you're right, Dinesh bhai. What happened was there was a big period when the people were not actually getting into these types of activities. So to make them get into this religious or this type of concept, they were telling stories. Actually, there are lots of, in the whole country, they were even doing dramatics or the poetics or the, what you call, those types of things in the temple. So Bhagavatam also came in that particular time period when they were telling stories to the people to get engaged into the religious activities. That's it.
Agreed. And for more important, Dinesh bhai, I think the key is to understand is that Keval Advait concept and the Gnana concept was primarily confined to educated Brahmins, and most of the average people had no idea. They were not learning any of those. So Bhakti school essentially democratized the process. They brought the knowledge of Gita and Brahma Sutra in a way that average uneducated person who was deprived of this was given some flavor of what the knowledge in Gnan Yoga was.
આ બધી સત્યનારાયણની કથા અને વૈભવ લક્ષ્મી ને એ બધું આવું જ છે ને. It is like that કે તમે આમ માનશો તો તમને આમ મળશે, તમને આમ થશે. It is like that, right? એટલે some of the kind of શ્રદ્ધા ના હોય તો તમે કશામાં આગળ ના વધી શકો.
I think Dinesh bhai, the point I would say is this: it's like elementary education, middle education, high school education, and college education. So most of the Upanishad and Brahma Sutra and everything was level of college, and most people lived in the middle school and elementary school. So this was meant for them.
Because I have tried to tell my kiddos this, and both of them said, Dad, just enough. This is nonsense. The youngsters, they don't buy into this.
Youngsters are more for Vedantic, એ લોકોને વધારે એ અપીલ લાગે. આ બધું અપીલ ના લાગે, એવું થાય.
You're right. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mean to hijack this. Go ahead.
It is a generation gap, right? Like when we were, when we were young, that time this was the only madhyam you can say that we were learning all those things. But the young generations are not exposed to all those things. So now they believe more into the Vedantic or the Gnan. And that's why they think that all the stories are humbug because they are...
As you mature, you will, right. As you mature, you're right.
So that's what I was going to say. It's just basically story to lead you. And then as we started understanding, we want to know more, not just the story, but we want to know what it is.
Right.
That's what I think.
સ્ટોરીમાં જ ના ભરાઈ જાવ એટલે પછી એમ કે you have to go beyond that.
Beyond that, right.
Like Rajan bhai said, this is more on an intellectual level and not so much on a storytelling level.
So basically, don't keep your mouth open, parrot will come.
ના એટલે હવે બધાને એટલે પેલું કેવું કે સ્ટોરી સાંભળવી તો જોઈએ કે શું છે એટલીસ્ટ.
બરાબર છે.
કારણ કે નહીં તો આ બધું તમને તમને બધું કશું ખબર ના પડે.
To be honest with you, Dinesh bhai, because we are talking about Vaishnavism and about Bhagavad and all these things, I actually read and I also listened to many lectures also. I probably would have skipped all of them if we were not going to talk about it. So at least for me, I know more about it now than I used to know 3 months ago.
Good, good.
I think
I'm glad at least you learned something. Good.
I agree with Smita Ben. I didn't know all this Paratni story.
Yeah, એટલે મને ગમ્યું આ મજા આવી અમને તો
આ તો
સાંભળવા.
અમે
મને
અમે
ગમ્યું.
આ પેલા
Yeah, I
દિલીપભાઈ
like it.
એમાં બધું ભાગવતનું બધું એ કર્યું તેમાં બધું સાંભળ્યું તો
No,
મેં
no.
oh my God, આ બધું ખરું છે.
Correct.
અને સ્મિતાબેન સાથે સાથે કિન્ડર ગાર્ડન ના સ્ટુડન્ટ બેઠા છે ને અહીંયા.
આપણે બધા
બધાની
ગીતા
વાત
બેન,
નથી
હું
થતી.
તો બધી kindergarten ની student જ છું.
Yeah.
No, but
ના,
Smita Ben, I
હું
like for
kindergarten
Rajan.
આવીશ, okay?
Yeah,
Eh?
for Rajan,
મારા
for,
માટે રિફ્રેશર કોર્સ હતો કારણ કે મેં બહુ પહેલા સાંભળી હતી તો મને મજા આવી કે બધું યાદ આવ્યું પાછું સાંભળવા.
સાંભળી હતી તો મેં સાંભળી હતી.
એનિમલ કિંગડમ આવે છે.
I like it. I like it.
All right.
પેલી ગોકર્ણની શું વાત હતી? પેલા કાન ગાયના જેવા હતા એટલે તમે પેલું કીધું બે છોકરા હતા. What was that about?
ભૂલી ગયો છું, મને યાદ નથી રહ્યું પણ પેલા ગાયના કાન હતા. there is a some kind of story કે ભાઈ એને ગાયના કાન અને ભૂતની વાત છે અને બધું છે પણ I have forgotten the whole story.
ના ના, I thought one was Vidwan and one was Murak. એવું કંઈક હતું
Yeah,
ને
એવું થઈ
કશું.
જાય, right. ને પેલો એક ભૂત જુએ છે ને બધું છે. I forgot the story.
ભાઈ તો રાજન તારે બીજો ક્લાસ આના બધી ભૂતના ને આ બધાના વાર્તા કરવી પડશે એમને.
આ તમે પેલી વર્ડની વાત કરી ને મેં કહું આ દેશમાં કેમ નથી? અહીંયા તો વધારે ઝાડ છે. We never think about ભૂત. પણ ઇન્ડિયામાં ચાલતા હોય ગામમાં તો બધા ભૂતની જ વાત કરીને બીક લાગે.
વર્ડની પાસે ભૂત હોય એમ કે વર્ડની પાસે વાત હોય એમ કે.
દિનેશભાઈ,
Anyway, keep going, my friend.
પ્રતાપ કહે છે તમે
થોડું નજીક આવો ને દિનેશભાઈ.
રાજનભાઈ રાત્રે 11 વાગે બીજો ક્લાસ શરૂ કરો ભૂતને માટે.
ભૂતની સ્ટોરીઝ.
Actually, it's appropriate. Halloween આવી જ રહ્યું છે.
Yeah.
Question is, Rajanbhai, the question is, are there similar stories or similar things in Christianity or Muslim?
Yes.
religion? I don't know. I'm asking a
Yeah,
question.
there are many of this story about Moses seeing the burning bush and burning bush tells him to do something are similar kind of mythological story.
Okay.
When Noah's ark પર ડૂબી ગયો, Adam ને Eve પેલું એપલ ખાધું અને ભગવાને punishment આપી, all these are kind of stories similar to this kind of stuff.
Okay.
પેલી હોડીમાં બધાને બબ્બે બબ્બે મૂકે છે એ પણ, right? Noah's ark.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, these are primitive stories every culture has.
Same thing about parting the sea.
Parting the sea also is there.
Yeah.
Right.
Moses parting.
All right, so let's go to Lord Krishna. Similar kind of concepts in Gita as well. So remember, Bhagavad probably came after Gita.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Bhagavad was done in order to emphasize bhakti aspect. So many of the things that are in Bhagavad have been borrowed in some fashion from Gita.
Oh.
Lord Krishna says this: I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds, which is similar to what Bhagavad says. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me in all their hearts. So basically, it's a repetition of same idea. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. They derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So that's a concept of grace, Pushti Marg, that The one who is devoted to me, I reciprocate by providing the grace so they can come closer to me. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of knowledge,
Ignorance.
of ignorance. So basically saying, I am Antaryami, that I reside in your heart, and I will remove the ignorance that you have so that you can come close to me. Basically, it is similar to what we saw in Bhagavad, close to each other. All right, let's move on. Lord Krishna again saying, these are all, remember, these are all Sanskrit slokas which have been translated by different people. So the one who has a bhakti bent will translate some of them in a bhakti bent. Those who are in Gnana Yoga, Keval Advaita, they will translate in a way that it emphasizes the other aspect. But this is how the bhakti school will look at Gita. However, for those who think of me alone, now remember when me alone, Bhakti school will say me means Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna is saying this to Arjun. Gnan school will say me means Atman. Me is not necessarily the man named Krishna, but Atman as a pervading force of the world, or Brahman. Me alone, making the sole object of their worship, who are in constant communion with me. I myself will provide for their every need and safeguard their possessions. O Arjuna, even the devotee of other gods who worship them with faith actually worship me alone, though not with the right understanding. So now what he says is this: even if you worship XYZ or ABC, ultimately it is me. It's just that you are taking a circuitous route. Instead of coming directly to me, you are going a roundabout way. All of them will come to me anyway. Because I, Lord Krishna, is the final of everything. For verily, I alone am the sole enjoyer and the Lord of all worship. But since they fail to grasp my essential nature, they return to mortal existence. And basically saying is that if you worship me, I'll pardon you, I'll grant you the moksha. If you pray a roundabout way, you will keep on being reborn until you realize that you need to come directly to me, Lord Krishna. If you want to be emancipated or liberated, I am the only one who can do that. That is what he's saying.
But this is only the Bhakti Yoga side.
This is Bhakti Yoga side.
Vaishnavites. Right. Because if you go to Shivite, they may not agree with.
Exactly right.
And the second, when you read all this and you see this me, doesn't it show you aham? Bhagwan should not have this aham, that it's me. But that's what all you see here. And I'm confused there.
Well, the problem is this, Dinesh Bhai. See, Bhakti school tends to view as me means Lord Krishna, and that's the only way you can do it. When Gnana school will say me essentially doesn't mean me the person, me the Brahman Atman complex. So Krishna says both ways in Gita. Some places he will say is that ultimately everything comes to me, and one place he will say is that those who pray other gods, mains and other lesser gods, they are condemned to life after life after life of suffering. So essentially what he is saying both ways. One way he says, oh, well, it doesn't matter, you can pray anybody and you will come eventually to me. Other way he says, only ignorant will pray the other guys. The real guys who know, they will only pray me. And Vallabhacharya, I'll come to that point some point later on. It's about Ananda Ashraya. Vallabhacharya, Vaishnavite school, Apadi school, he will say, you should never ever pray anybody else except Lord Krishna.
But
Because
Lord Krishna is Vishnu, right?
yeah, but
So
they will
એક
say
જ ભગવાન છે.
no, but they will say Vishnu is a form of Krishna, not the other way around. They will Vallabhacharya will say that. So for him, and I'll come to that slide later on, which basically says re-emphasize the same idea that is a kind of fundamentalism, basically saying that I am the only savior, no one else is, which is what many of these Vaishnava school dominant, the one who are dedicated, will take it. Same thing applies to Christ. You know, when Saint Francis of Assisi says, Christ liveth in me, many Christians and many evangelical Christians will say, only Christ. No, he says, nobody can come to God, to the Father, except through me. That's what Christ says. Now, average liberal Christian will say, me is just a conduit. Christ is a conduit. It doesn't mean Christ, only Christ. Anyone who is Christ-like is fine. But those who read fundamental way will say, me means only Christ, no one else. So that's the basic argument of fundamentalism versus liberalism. You know, the text which will be viewed in an abstract manner will be more general. The text, the people who read the text in a literal sense will stick to that idea, is that this me is my God only, no one else. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's all argument is back and forth is about this. Who is right and who is wrong? The guys who will exclude everybody else because they believe is that me is only Christ or Shiva or Krishna or God knows what. Whatever.
Okay.
So all these people, આપણે કૃષ્ણના કેટલા બધા રૂપ હોય છે, right? દ્વારકાધીશ, રણછોડરાય or વેંકટેશ્વર, જે સાઉથના લોકો માનતા. So these are all coming up under this as a Krishna. All are Vaishnava.
Krishna, right? Yeah.
Different form of Krishna, but it's a me.
It's
And
me,
different
right?
God
Krishna,
means other than
Krishna manifested in multiple ways. Yeah. And there are about 9 different ways. It comes in the later on slide. Yeah. Let's move on.
We have a 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Do
All
you
right.
want to come back or stop at
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Let's just let's finish 5 more minutes. So we'll finish and then we'll keep on going next time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this is Vallabhacharya's hagiography, biography, call it that way. He was born in 1493, died in 1531. He was a Telugu Brahmin, and his philosophy is called Suddha Advaita, or pure non-dualism. He was living, his parents were living in Varanasi, and they were moving actually from Varanasi to south, because in those days, the Islamic sort of Islamic way of affecting Hindus. So they were migrating back to south to move away from Islam. And he was born apparently in Champaran. I mean, that's the story. And they thought that he was not alive. So they dropped him in near the tree and walked away. And then they suddenly got a message saying that this is a divine child, so go back. And they went back, and this child, this baby was alive and was protected by a halo of fire. All this is hagiography, you know. And then he became Vallabhacharya. And they moved on to the south later on, and then eventually came back to Vraj later on in his life. So during this time, now it says also that the influence was primarily in UP, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and the Madhya Pradesh. You know, this Vallabhacharya school that we follow, Pustiman, is more important in these 4 states. Okay. And what is a Rudra Sampradaya? Our Sampradaya is called Rudra Sampradaya. Now this is another story. Basically, Krishna Bhagavan gave knowledge to Shankar Bhagavan, and Vallabhacharya's father belonged to that school, and that is why it's called Rudra Sampradaya also. So it's kind of, you know, the way it worked out this. Those who are Krishnite will say everything was given from Krishna to Shiva and to Brahma. Those who are Shaivite will say Shiva Bhagavan gave everything to Krishna and Brahma. So same version, but who is the final one will depend upon is the Shaivite school or Krishnite school. And also there is a distinction. Some Vallabhacharya school will say Vishnu is a manifestation of Krishna. Ultimate reality is not Vishnu, it's Krishna. So it's basically kind of call it useless conversation, but that's what it is. So we are also called Rudra Sampradaya, and I was surprised. I was trying to find why we call Rudra. Rudra is Shiva, but that's a story.
So આપણા વૈષ્ણવનો ચંપારણ, that is a very important place. That's where Vallabhacharya was born. That's why.
Apparently, that is the story. Yes. Yeah.
અને પછી એમણે કઈ 18 જગ્યાએ કે 21 જગ્યાએ પગલા પાડ્યા ને
there are 84 બેઠક છે એમની. એટલે 84 એવી જગ્યાઓ છે કે જ્યાંથી પછી જ્ઞાન આપવાનું શરૂ કર્યું બધું ભક્તિ આખા દેશમાં ફરીને, તો 84 જગ્યાએ રોકાઈને અમને લેક્ચર આપ્યા. એટલે those are called બેઠક.
yes.
એટલે એમના પછી છોકરાએ અને એમના છોકરાએ બીજી ટોટલ 142 બેઠક છે. એટલે 84 were original બેઠક અને બાકીની એમના kids brought. Now he had 2 kids. Apparently he did not want to marry, but the story goes something like this. Krishna Bhagavan came and told him 3 times that you need to get married. So that's how he got married. Okay. And the second kid, the second son was Vitthal Nathji. It's called Gosaiji. He is the one who created this sampradaya. So his teaching was created in a sampradaya of Pustimar, was done by Gosaiji. And then what happened is that he had 7 kids and 1 adopted kid. So he had 8 kids, Gosaiji, and 8 kids. આપણે જે બધા વંશો જે છે આપણે બેટીજી અને એ બધા જે છે, they are all the vamsajas of descendants of those 8 kids.
8 main kids.
8 main like grandkids of Vallabhacharya, and his descendants are all over wherever our temples are, basically.
So નૈના આપણે જ્યારે ઇન્ડિયા જઈએ ત્યારે ચંપારણ જોવા જવાનું છે.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of